Hello everyone, welcome to the All Sports Betting Podcast. After a few months out, we are making a return, and after my enforced injury absences plus moving house plus a load of other things which has halted the progress, we're delighted to be back, and I'm delighted to welcome my associate Kevin Harper. How are you doing, Kev?
Yeah, not bad, Steve. Pretty busy as always. Big year, big football season coming up, obviously culminates in the World Cup, but good apart from that.
Excellent. Well, we're going to start with quite a small podcast, really, focusing solely on English League Two action on Tuesday night. So not too much to talk about here, but Kev is obviously the expert in this division, and he's got a couple of selections for everyone. So we're going to start with the first of them, and the match is Crewe against Cambridge United, and you're a big fan of the hosts in this particular fixture, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, Steve. Yeah, I always thought there was a little bit of improvement in Crewe this season. I guess, to be fair, with everything that was going on last season with that paedophile sting and everything else, there was obviously a distraction off the field for them, and I think certainly when I saw them in January, which was pretty much at the heart of when all of that started coming out, you could tell that they were being weighed down by focus off the field rather than things that were going on the field. But this season, they seem to have sorted themselves out. I think Chris Porter was a really good signing from Colchester, a really good striker at this level, aerial threat as well. They kind of had some good strikers there last year. They just didn't have anyone to sort of knock the ball down to them. But not only can he do that, but he can score goals as well. And he's already scored a few goals this season. And I just think the rest of their side, I mean, you know about Crewe, you know they're going to have good players coming through their academy. And they're in a decent part of the world that they can attract some decent loan signings as well. And I wouldn't be too surprised to see them right in the mix come the end of the season. Certainly the way they've started suggests that could be the case. Obviously, they host a Cambridge side who have been fairly hit and miss, you'd have to say. And they're obviously recovering from losing their best player, much to my delight, because he's gone and joined Luton, Luke Berry. You know, they've not perhaps gone as badly as I thought they might do without him, but at some stage, certainly when the chips are down, you know, last season he would pop up with an important goal, and that's one of the problems that they have in this season. They've only scored 4 goals in 6 games, and that's not ideal, really. You know, they got beaten again at the weekend at Barnet. Okay, it's not the easiest place to go, but, you know, a form side should really be winning that game. But, you know, I look at it, they've only scored 2 goals in their last 4 games. That coincides with Berry joining Luton. I think goals are going to be a bit of an issue for Cambridge, and the longer that they don't score without Berry, the more there's going to be a bit of pressure on them. Crewe, as I say, going along really nicely. The fact that you can get plenty of draw cover here, though I'm not so much worried about the draw cover, but obviously if you can get it, you take it. I think with this being a midweek game, fairly long journey from Cambridge to Crewe as well. I think all things are in favour of the home side here. I like Crewe, particularly minus quarter.
Yeah, minus a quarter. If you really wanted to play it safe, you could take draw no bet, but a good juicy odds here at currently 2.11 at the time of recording. Crewe minus a quarter there. Now your second selection is going to be Newport, Kev, I do believe.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, anyone who's followed my website for the last couple of years will know that this regularly annoyed me. Every season that I've been betting in League Two, they've looked like they've gone down, only to stay up on the last day of the season, much to my disgust, having backed them to go down both times. But I didn't do that this season, not just because I've learnt my lesson, but also actually I saw signs that there's shoots of life in that Newport side. They've suddenly found people who care about the club, but you know, it seems a simple solution or a simple thing to say, but they've got a Welsh manager, and I always think that's a start. You know, prior to that, they had people like Justin Edinburgh. Okay, he did a really good job there, but you know, you have to get a kind of feel for where you're at, really. And Mike Flynn certainly got that. Not only that, but he's an ambitious guy as well. Obviously new to management, probably wants to go up quite high as a manager. And Newport is actually a place where you can sort of look good, particularly around the area that they are, with Cardiff and Swansea doing well. There's an awful lot of focus there. As Edinburgh found out, he ended up at Gillingham, didn't he? So I think they're going to improve this season. Certainly the signs are that they're going to improve. They've gone pretty well to start off with. A couple of surprising results in there, you'd have to say. But, you know, they're mid-table. They've only lost one of their their first 6 games. That was at Exeter, the runaway leaders, so there's certainly no shame in that whatsoever. Okay, they've drawn 3, which might be a bit of a concern. But then you look at where they've drawn. You know, Newport, they drew with Wickham at home on Saturday. Never a bad result. They're going well. And they've also drew with Crewe, and I've just bigged up Crewe's chances. So I think if you look at their individual form, it's pretty good. Frank Newble was, or Nuble, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name actually, one of the players that was shortlisted for the Player of the Month. So they've obviously got a player in really, really hot form. But more importantly than anything else, Cheltenham just look an awful side. I've already backed them to be relegated this season. Seen absolutely nothing that suggests that I'm wrong with that. I think they're going to be right down there. They've actually got a youngster on loan from Bristol City that I like, Freddie Hines. He came through Luton's youth system. He was a bit lightweight when he left Luton last year, though, and I wouldn't have thought he's bulked up too much. And Newport, one thing you have to do when you go to Newport is you have to stand up, you have to put your chest out, and you have to fight. And I'm not sure that's his game. So I fear for Cheltenham here. It's not the longest trip in the world, which is a positive for them, but they've got a small squad. And on a Tuesday night after just playing on a Saturday, you know, there could be a little bit of tiredness in the camp. They've only won one of their first 6 games, Cheltenham. That was at Crawley when Crawley were terrible. They've actually picked up a little bit recently, Crawley, but they started the season in horrendous form. They were easy pickings when Cheltenham went there. Don't think Newport are going to be the same. I think Newport can get back to winning ways after a couple of games without a win, albeit those 2 games, it should be said, are against much harder opposition than what Cheltenham are going to be.
Yeah, you can get as big as 2.12 on Newport to win the game, and you're going to back them straight on the nose here, aren't you, Kev?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you need to worry about anything like conditions or anything like that. Amazingly, Rodney Parade's actually got some grass on it at this time of year, so they can play the football that they want to play. I just think they're a better side. If you want to take draw cover, obviously it's a midweek game. You know, legs do get heavy in League Two in midweek. But all things being equal, I see Newport winning this game.
Yeah, so 2 selections for Kev on this card. Newport -0.5 or straight on the nose to win, and Crewe -0.25. But just before we end the podcast, I would like to get your opinion on 2 or 3 games here, Kev, especially with 2 teams right at the top. I'm sure everyone, you know, has a look at the card and sees which teams are in great form, who's in, you know, winning matches. And Exeter have won 4 straight heading into tonight's game at Barnet. They're actually the underdogs here. How do you see this one going? Are Exeter a bit of value, do you think? I'm
slightly surprised they're the underdogs, I must admit. It's almost like bookmakers don't think that they're the real deal. I do, I must admit. I thought last season, well, it took them an absolute age to get going last season, didn't it? But when they did, you know, they were flying. I guess, you know, if you look at those 4 wins that you've just mentioned, Lincoln, Cheltenham, Newport and Forest Green, it's hard to see any of those 4 being promotion candidates at the end of the season. Certainly on what I've seen of those sides, they're not going to be. So maybe they've had a soft schedule, but you can only beat what's in front of you, can't you? And they've done that really well. I guess the one thing that we can't ignore is Barnet. They're actually going along okay this season. You look at their last 2, 4-1 win over Swindon, which looks fantastic compared to what I saw on Saturday, and 3-1 win over Cambridge last time out. Okay, I'm not going to gloss over that too much because I've just mentioned that Cambridge are lacking their best player. They beat Luton as well. I was there that day. I thought the game was going to be 0-0 all day long, and then they found a wonder strike in the last minute. And I guess that's what they've got in them. They've actually got a really decent strike force, to be fair, Steve. You know, John Akindi, absolute nailed-on goal machine at this level. I'm amazed he's still at Barnet. I know Luton tried to sign him, not with too much intent. I wish we'd have been a bit more stronger with that. But he'll score goals. Jamal Campbell-Rice will score goals, and they've got 1 or 2 others that are going along quite nicely as well. It might be that overs is the way to go in this, actually. Just looking at it, Steve. You look at Exeter's away form. They've just won 3-1 at Forest Green. Earlier in the season, they won 4-3 at Cheltenham. They concede goals on the road, but they don't half score some as well. And that doesn't surprise me because they're a real counter-attacking side, really good football inside as well. And the pitch at the Hive should be okay for them to play their football. Might be a tricky game in terms of them winning, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a few goals.
Interesting one there. And another team in good form at the moment, Notts County. They won 4 out of 5 games. They're in 3rd place. They face Swindon at home. And you can get odds against on Notts County. Swindon are sort of mid-table, or they do come into the match on the back of a good win.
Yeah, they do. A win that annoyingly was handed to them far too easily on Saturday, has to be said. To be fair, I thought Luton were the better side for 25 minutes, but then, centre back and captain got sent off, penalty was given, penalty was scored, and, there's only ever one winner after that. I'm not sure I can judge Swindon on that effort, to be fair, although I do think Swindon are going to be right there this season. When I was predicting my 3 or my sort of 6 to be in the mix at the end of the season, Swindon are definitely one of those. Notts County, they were on the fringes for me, but there's no denying that they're in good form. They just switch off at times for my liking, Notts County. I don't trust them defensively. I think back to when I was on them a few weeks ago against Accrington. It was a Friday night game. They were 2-0 up against 10 men. I was counting my chips. And next thing I know, I click back on Flash Score and it's 2 each and everything's gone tits up. So that's a concern. That's not necessarily a negative. Obviously, Accrington, good side, going really well. My tip for the title, albeit probably just to pinch place money rather than to win the actual title. I wouldn't go against Swindon here, I don't think. They've got a decent away record, haven't they? They went to Carlisle and won earlier on in the campaign, might have been on the opening day. They seem chalk and cheese away from home compared to what they are at home. 3 wins on the trot away from home. Only conceded 1 goal in that time as well. So it might just be that they enjoy being away from the pressure of their own fans. Obviously, they're a relegated side. Fans might still be on their case from last season. And the fact that they get to play with a little bit more freedom on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they certainly get a result, if not a win, maybe a draw. Again, it's another game that you can see some goals in, I would imagine.
Yeah, for those looking for an easy banker home win, it might not be such a case there. Just before we go off, I suppose we're going to have to talk about Luton, seeing as we've got you on board here, Kev. But before that, I think I just want to talk about Port Vale a little bit, because that's who Luton play on Tuesday night. Now, me and you used to have an acquaintance of ours, a massive Port Vale fan, who I think we've kind of lost touch with him over the years. But Andy, if you're listening, I really feel for you at the moment, mate, because rock bottom and things are not going particularly well for the Vale, are they, Kev? They seem in real crisis. And, I mean, there's a big expectation Luton will win the game. And would you expect your guys to deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Andy, if you are listening, I'll have a few oatcakes when I come up to the game at Port Vale later on in the season. It's weird, Steve, because if you read my website, I actually tipped Port Vale to get promoted this season. A lot of that was playing the odds, I must admit. They were twice the size and 3 times the price of the likes of Chesterfield and Coventry, and I didn't think they were a great deal worse than either. I still don't think they're a great deal worse than either. And indeed, the league table actually shows that they're not terribly worse than either. But unfortunately, what I have done is I've obviously underestimated just what a state the 3 sides were in that came down. Are they as bad as the league table suggests? Well, it's never good when at this stage of the season, you win on the opening day, and then your next 5 games are all defeats, is it? Struggling for goals, they've only scored 5. But then on the flip side of that, they've only conceded 9. They've lost their last 3 games 1-0. So it's not like they're getting regularly battered or anything like that. I think the defeat at Chesterfield was a bit more of a concern than the last 3, that's for sure. But yeah, I think to answer your question, I do expect Luton to win the game. Or rather, I think Luton should be winning the game. There's a little bit of pressure coming on Luton at the moment. Obviously, that 8-2 win at the start of the season got an awful lot of headlines. Maybe in hindsight, it got too many headlines from a Luton point of view. Sides didn't come to Luton looking to be open and expansive anyway. But if they even considered having those thoughts, they've certainly went out the window on that opening day. Maybe also the thing that went against Luton on that day is when you win 8-2 on the opening game, expectations suddenly crank up another notch. Now, they were pretty high anyway with the players that Luton brought in. Obviously, you look at James Collins, one of the best strikers in the league last season. Brilliant signing. I've mentioned 3 or 4 times in this podcast how good Luke Berry is. Alan McCormack, Andrew Shinney, Jack Stacey from Exeter. Really, really good signings. Most importantly of all, they've plugged the gap in goal, which was a massive issue for Luton last season. Marek Stech, probably going to be the best goalkeeper in the league over the course of the season. All things being equal, they should win this game. But we know how it's going to play, don't we? Port Vale are going to sit. They're going to sit deep. They're going to sit deep. Do Luton have what it takes to break them down? If they do, they win. If they don't, Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats, I would be sort of thinking sort of 1-0, 2-0 Luton here. But the interesting thing is, if you did tip Port Vale for promotion, just maybe they're not quite as bad as their league position might suggest at the moment. Well, thanks very much for your thoughts as ever, Kev, on this round of League Two matches. It was good to be back, and we will be returning again for the weekend, where we'll be discussing a more wider range of football leagues. So until that particular episode, I'll say goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, goodbye.